everybody. Today what's happening is it's kind of early in the morning and I'm up before everybody and it's kind of quiet, so I thought I'd go ahead and make a video for y'all talking about some of the concerns and things that are going on in the world. So, there's wars, there's, school shootings, there's just shootings going on. There's a lot of things happening in the news and in the world where there's a lot of separation and a lot of pain and suffering happening. And so I wanted to discuss my thoughts on those topics because lots of people, including my own family and things like that, are very much worried about the state of the world right now. And so I wanted to discuss that. So I'm talking about this from a non-dual perspective, which is the only reality that really is the truth. So all of these things are actually happening, but at the same time they're not happening. So essentially all of these things that we see that are happening, all these tragedies and people suffering, those are happenings. They are happening, but they're happening to no one. No one is actually suffering. No one is actually going through all of this. When it's all seen through, there's just no one there. So there's a bit of a underlying peace in that, knowing that no one is actually being harmed. Of course, for the person that's here experiencing this as their expression, they can appear to be suffering. They can appear to be hurt, all of these things. So it is hard. So on one hand, while there is nothing really happening to no one and it's all an illusion, on the other hand, for the expression that sits here and talks to you, I see that there's no one there, and I see that there's no one here with me, and that we're all one. But in that oneness, there can be sadness, there can be grief, there can be all of these things for those other expressions that are apparently suffering. So when I see, that there is a shooting or there is someone that has gone through something, specifically in the news lately, there's just been a lot of shootings, and we know about the war in Ukraine and Russia and things like that. So all of those things, if I am aware of them and watching the news and I see that this is happening wherever it's happening, initially there is a sense of sadness. There is a sense of it being something that I don't wish upon anybody, even if it is just a nobody or an expression that has no self, which is everybody already. But there is a sense of sadness because let's say that suffering was happening here to this expression. It is felt. It is felt. So I can see how for those expressions that are going through this, it is, difficult. It is suffering. It is life happening in not a very happy way, we could say. But it's not happening to anybody, and everything's actually in perfect harmony and in control. But it is hard to see that happening with another expression. So when I see that happening, on the news, or if I meet someone and they share with me something that they're going through that is hard, the oneness that I see, in them, that we're all one, united, I don't wish that upon them because essentially they are the same as me. And all of this is happening. But somewhere or another, this was something that was meant to happen, something that could be no other way. So whatever is happening is literally happening exactly as it should happen. And while I could say, I don't wish that upon anybody, or I don't wish that to ever happen, somewhere or another, that was what was willed to happen. So in oneness, we are all one. And somewhere it was put into place or determined as life is happening that would happen. and it will not happen any other way, no matter what happens. So everything's just happening as it should. There's really no changing it. There's really no doing anything about it. We can feel that we're doing things, but essentially all that we're doing was already going to happen regardless of us thinking that we were going to do it. But it does give our life some sense of being when we feel that we are doing it. So I live my life as if I'm doing it. But essentially I understand that everything that's happening is happening exactly as it should. And really it could not be any other way. Even if another expression intervened and tried to change something, that is also what was meant to be. It is never any other way. Our finite form does not have the ability to change the trajectory of all of these things that are already happening or will happen. So a lot of the things that are happening at this time, like those school shootings or the shootings that have occurred elsewhere and wars and all this stuff, you know, depending on what country you're in and what you're seeing, all of these things are happening, and we could say maybe they aren't the most pleasant things. They aren't, if you're a spiritual person, maybe they're not at a high vibration or something like that. Like we could say that they aren't out of love, right? Because the ultimate truth is love. And it feels that that stuff that's happening is not out of love and people are being hurt. And that's the part that does hurt and create sadness in our expressions because we see a lack of love. But essentially everything is in control, everything is in harmony, and everything is happening to create the greatest amount of love, essentially. But we are in one slice of time right now. So if you'd like, you can go back and watch one of my videos about time, titled Timelessness. Everything is happening at once. So time is all happening, past, present, future is all happening at once. But our finite form perceives only this slice of time. So if you watch that video, I explained it as like a cake. So the cake includes past, present, future. But us in this time, we feel only that we have this slice of cake or pie or whatever. So we are only experiencing that slice. But we can't see or even understand the future. Even if we've had this non-dual realization, I can't tell you the future. But I can tell you that everything is in perfect harmony and working towards the ultimate good and greater amount of love that could ever happen. So if we look at people's lives, most of the times there's just bumps in the road, turmoil. Some people have suffered a lot more than others. But life is always doing life. It's never the same for everybody. It's never perfect for everybody. No one is free of suffering. All of those things that happen in our lives that have caused suffering and these sorts of things are always building us, growing us, changing us, moving us, and having us experience life fuller and fuller and fuller. Even though it hurts, even though it's hard, it's all a perfect design happening in the way that it should, and it can't be any other way. But we are safe. We are one. We are all one, and no one is separate. No one is actually suffering. But in these stories, we are living a story. We are living this story, and everybody's story is very interesting. Everybody's story includes suffering. Everybody's story can be looked at if we look at their life backwards, we can see where certain times that we wouldn't have wished upon anybody have really helped that person grow, or have really always been okay. So we can even look at history that way. Our time in history right now is full of separation and a little bit chaotic. And we can look even further back if we want to look at history, although history and everything is already just happening all at once. We can look at those past events and see how those events have changed and grown over time. And things like slavery and things like women's rights and all of these things that maybe people were suffering in the past over not having rights, basic human rights, not having freedom. Those sorts of things begin to change over time. And it's a paradox because time doesn't exist, but everything's already there. Everything's, we could say, not okay and okay at the same time. So if we look at that specific event of, let's say, slavery, at that time, that may not be okay. But if we remove time and we can see everything to where we are now or even into the future, we can see that all of that was actually in harmony. It wasn't okay, but it all worked out in a way that we are now on, growing towards love, growing towards more acceptance, growing towards freedom, growing towards everybody having those basic rights regardless of who you are, what you look like, your skin color, where you come from. All of those things are moving towards unity and everybody being one and having all the same rights, all the same love, all of that. I mean, maybe not the same love, but the greatest amount of love for that particular expression that's needed. So everything is always moving and changing, and life is happening. There's ups and there's downs, and when there's downs, that gives space for there to be ups, and everything is in perfect harmony. But to the person and the individual that's experiencing it, it can be very scary. It can be very sad. And all of those things happen, and we can sit with those emotions. But when we've had this realization, you also realize it's not happening to you, but life is happening. And so we experience life. We experience those feelings. We experience whatever. And if we choose to make a change in the government or change in a law or speak up or love someone more so that these things don't happen, we feel that we're doing them and we feel that we're helping. And that's just life happening. That's also just happening as it should. It wouldn't have happened any other way. So whatever you're choosing to do was already there, has already always been there. All these changes, and if we could look into the future and see how a lot of these things have been either fixed, or let's say they haven't been fixed, maybe it's moving in the opposite direction. I don't believe so, but if it is, everything that is happening just right in that way that had already been willed by oneness, which is all of us, all of our expressions actually already wanted that. But in the end, it's all for the greatest amount of love and change in those situations. If we look at them, it does appear that that is the way that things happen. There is regression, there is other things, but those things have to happen in order to grow all of these expressions into their full potential of love and understanding and oneness, and ultimately into unity, into becoming and understanding that they are one, that we are all one, and really nothing is happening. These are just all illusions happening, like a movie, like a story, just happening for whatever reason. There really isn't a reason, so that's why I don't say any specific reason. But it's a beautiful story. Stories have to have ups and downs, have to have a climax, have to have all of these things, just like our lives do. And if we examine and look at our lives, most of us can see the story of our lives, and they're very unique to each individual. So everything that's happening couldn't be any other way. I know it's painful. I know it hurts to see others, and especially if you are in tune or understand or have the realization of everything just happening and no selves, it can really cause some sadness there, because you realize you are all one. But we can't see the future, and we can't escape our expression. So we have to deal with those emotions of sadness and all of these. But those things, like even dealing with sadness, which we couldn't, it would be no other way. Whatever's happening with you, that's what's supposed to happen. But let's say I'm experiencing sadness. That's growing in me, in this expression, not as a self, just as a happening, to do whatever. Maybe it grows and I feel sadness and I want to be an advocate for something and help somebody. And that's just what's all happening for this story, for this expression, to live life fully and share and express love. So when I make these videos, me sitting here making this video, I have no real choice in this. This was already going to happen. This was already happening. Everything is already exactly as it should be and could be no other way. No one can change this. It is how it is. We can feel that we're doing things. We can feel that we're improving. We can feel that this is happening. And that is also it. That is just life doing what it does. It seems to move in a specific way, but it really doesn't. Everything's happening at once. If we could see timelessness, if we could see that everything is already in harmony, we would have a lot more peace. And that is one of the things that I have experienced, is seeing how everything is just timeless, and past, present, and future all occur at once, and yet are simply an illusion as well. So when you can see all of this just laid out, and then also see how it's an illusion, I wouldn't say you don't suffer, but you understand more, and you can move through these moments of sadness, these moments of tragedy much quicker, because you realize ultimately everything is already in harmony. Everything is already whole. No one is actually suffering, and everything is in control for whatever purpose it is. It has been willed this way, essentially, by you. Yet we don't remember that. It is all happening exactly as it should. No one's in control of it. It's just all happening that way, the way it should, the way it was always going to be, has always been, and it can't be any other way. So without this realization, it's very hard to grasp this, but I hope I have communicated to you that essentially everything always balances itself out. All of those tragedies, all of those moments of sadness eventually balance out. My most sad, down, depressing times, where I wouldn't have wished that on anybody, I can now say I am very happy and blessed that I did experience it, because that keeps growing into what is now the realization of no self. And without those moments, this would have never happened. I can't see it have been any other way. So whatever is happening with you, it is hard. If it is, suffering, if we're talking about suffering, sadness, and all these things, it is hard. But I encourage you to examine your life and see how different events, tragic events, have actually grown your story as this expression in life. Grown it to be more loving, grown it to be more accepting, grown it to be closer to what is truth, or seeking the truth. And if you are seeking the truth, if you're doing anything, there is nothing wrong with that. Everything you are doing couldn't have been any other way. It is this way, and it's always been this way. And past, present, future, it's all happening at once. If we could see it all at once, we would have so much more peace. But we are only in this sliver of time that we can experience and see. Even I, without this realization, cannot see the future. But I can see that everything's happening at once, everything's whole, and most importantly, there's no one that it's happening to. So while I could be suffering, that's just suffering happening. It's not happening to me. It's not happening to anybody. It feels that way, but again, that's the ownership, the ego, or whatever you want to call that ownership happening. And that is okay too. That's what's meant to happen in that story or that expression as well. So I just wanted to talk about that. There's no easy way to say that these events that have hurt people or people have died are okay, especially in the moment, here now talking, especially to someone that has not had this realization. It does feel like bypassing. It does feel like insensitivity or indifference. But I can tell you, there is so much love there, and there is so much in harmony that is to come, which is already here, which has always been here. But to the person that sees it linearly, who hasn't had this realization, I speak this way to convey that everything is okay. It is okay. It is okay. And it is okay to be sad and suffer and experience this. We wouldn't be this human expression if we didn't have these feelings. We wouldn't be this human expression if we didn't feel those feelings and feel them genuinely. Because if we didn't feel them genuinely, if we always said, oh, there's just no self, it doesn't matter, we would never grow. If I would have said that in my moments of suffering in my past, I wouldn't have had this realization. So we have to be genuine to our feelings, sit with them, experience them. That is life arising. That is it. That is what non-duality is. It is everything that arises and being in it completely and totally full. But essentially you never forget what is the truth if you've had this realization that nothing is really happening, but we get to live this life. We get to live this story, and we got to live it completely and fully present and experiencing every little bit of what it brings to us. And if we do that, we are in non-duality. This is non-duality. There is nothing separate from it. But a lot of times we want to ignore this suffering. We want to ignore this or that because it hurts too much. And I'm giving an explanation of what essentially everything that's happening is. It's wholeness, it's harmony, it's beautiful, it's love, it's all of this stuff. But in the moment, it can be hard, and suffering and pain is also love. That's love. So when I feel sad that somebody died in a shooting or something happened to somebody, that's love. You can't deny these things. So whatever is happening, whether you think you're doing it or not, do it fully, completely, and be present in it. And in that, your story will begin to evolve. However it evolves, but however it evolves is exactly how it should be. Can't be any other way. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. It is a little complex, but I know there's just so much going on in the news and things that people are concerned about. And I wanted to speak on it, not very specifically, but in the sense of what's all happening and my understanding of it from a non-dual perspective, which is really the only perspective or the only truth. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're new here and you like these videos, please subscribe. And I have my contact information in the description box, and I also have written a book. If you are interested, check that out. I'd love to hear any questions. Thank you.